You're how was everybody doing today? It's your boy. We back at it again. Brand new episode. Me, myself, and I. The three of us. We here today. Immediately. Right now. Good afternoon, good morning, and good riddance. Wherever the fuck you are. We doing something chill today. Something cool. Today's going to be a little bit more serious. It's just going to be me, and I think that I'm just going to go on a little bit of a rant today. Yeah, because I got a bunch of shit that I wanted to talk about, and I think that it would just be better if I did it myself. Wouldn't you say so? Maybe. Maybe not. I don't know. But I just had a bunch of shit on my mind, a bunch of things that I wanted to talk about. And I figured, why would I go on a rant or some shit? Because it's just what I got going on. But I think that I might can tell you something that you might can learn too. Maybe you might can learn a little bit of something from this. And maybe my mistakes. I've made mistakes. And we're going to be talking about some of those mistakes. A good mistake that I get to fall in quite often is the topic of politics. It's kind of spicy. It's a little bit of a spicy topic. It gets everybody going. It tends to, a lot of people tend to get real spicy about politics. And it's just one of those things, man. It's one of those things that people just, they just can't fucking stand it. And, I've grown to have a little bit of resent to it as well. And, it's just one of those things that divides people. Actually, it's probably one of the main things that divides people, especially in this country that we live in right here, America. Yeah, we live in the good old state of America. And, there's nothing wrong to have your own beliefs and whatnot, because everybody has their own beliefs and believes what they want to, and that's okay. And, that's how the system's set up, is so that you can believe whatever the fuck you want to believe. And you can say whatever the fuck you want to say. And that's what I fuck with. I'll fuck with that. But there's a certain type of politics that people gets into, whether you're the left or the right, or you're just, apolitical. I try to stay apolitical. There is one thing I have to say, though, like on the podcast especially, I have said a bunch of political things, and a lot of people don't agree with me on a lot of the politics that I've talked about, but I ran across something that somebody said on the internet not that long ago. It was Rick Rubin. I don't know if you're familiar with Rick Rubin, big famous producer or whatnot. And he's pretty chill. I really like a lot of the things that he talks about. He talks about a lot of spirituality type shit. He was a bigger person. He talked about a lot of self-improvement. He did self-improve himself. He was a bigger person. Now he's much smaller. And he talks about spirituality and whatnot. And I heard him having a conversation with Andrew Huberman. I watched the podcast a long time ago, but just here recently I thought about what he said. He said something about the WWE. I'm not a big wrestling fan myself. I ain't. But he said that it's his favorite sport. And I don't consider it a sport because it is fake. But that was his point. His point is that the WWE is more real than real life. And he made a really good point. I really like the point that he made because it's not necessarily scripted, but I think that what they said is that it's played out. It's predetermined. That's the word that was used. It was predetermined. And that's really fucking cool. What's cool about it is that what he was saying is that a lot of the things in life are bullshit. People bullshit. He was explaining how the shit that goes on in the WWE is more real than real life. And you're thinking, how in the fuck is that possible? Because the shit ain't real. Now listen, you got to think about it. You're not thinking. What he was saying is that everything, especially politics, he didn't specifically say politics, but I know where he was going with that. It's all for show. A lot of this shit is for show. And a lot of it is people saying shit that is just people saying shit. And it's just that. There's nothing really to... And you see, the thing is, there's a big reason why I'm talking about this right now, is because in the past, and not even in the past, in the future too, there has been the topic of politics. And politics, I have seen with my own eyes, ruin relationships. Completely ruin them. I've probably even ruined a few relationships with my own politics. And I don't like that. And that is why I'm trying to stay away from the politics. All right? And so you see, there's the overarching, larger scale politics where it's like the country politics. But there's also the politics of like local politics. And it's like he said, she said type shit. It's the drama that you hear about. And a lot of that is political. Let me look up the definition of what the fuck politics means. Politic. Definition. Let's look that shit up. Let's see what that shit means. Relating to the government or the public affairs of a country. Okay, and then there is relating to ideas or strategies of a particular party or group in politics. Okay, interested or active in politics, motivated or caused by a person's beliefs or actions concerning politics. Political. Okay, that was a political definition. Politics definition. Let's see. The activities associated with the governance of a country or other area, especially the debate or conflict among individuals or parties having or hoping to achieve power. Activities within an organization that are aimed at improving someone's status or position and are typically considered to be devious or divisive. Sorry. Okay, so there's those definitions. You take with those definitions as you please. But a lot of the things that goes on within the political realm can't be changed. And there's nothing that you can do about it. This is the conclusion that I've come to, and we're going to get into a little bit deeper into it. I don't like to talk about politics anymore, because if you go back to the old episodes, 1 year, 2 year, 3 years ago, the older episodes, I'll be saying some political shit, and I'm talking to people, and I'm talking shit. Maybe not directly, but the crazy thing is that I was saying it with such confidence that I was even believing what the fuck I was saying. Maybe I was getting other people to believe what I was saying. And I believed what I was saying. I did. But what I've also believed now and come to the conclusion of, this is kind of like a compilation of conclusions that I've just come to here recently. Maybe you might can help from this too. This is why I'm making this video, because maybe you might can help from it too. But what I've come to the realization of is that nothing is set in fucking stone, okay? I've said a bunch of shit on this podcast right here that maybe I shouldn't have said. Or maybe I thought that I was 100% right in, and I've been proved to be wrong. And that's okay. That is okay. It's okay to be wrong. It's all right. But the problem is that I'm saying shit that I think that I know about, but I really don't know about. And see, this is the whole problem with the whole political sphere, if you would, is that I have noticed, because me, myself, I'm pretty educated. Okay, I like to consider myself pretty educated. I think that I'm pretty smart, I'm a smarter than your average bear, if you would. But that's not me bragging or anything. You know, ask somebody about it. But I just like to think that I'm pretty educated, and I think that I like to know a lot of things because I like to study a lot of things, okay? I like to be educated. I don't want to be uneducated. Therefore, I study for the education. And I've noticed that there's a lot of people that believe that they're educated too, and then they turn out to be wrong. And, there's a bunch of people out there that do this for a living, especially journalists. I have seen a lot of journalists that do this whole political thing for a living, and then they'll say something with 100% certainty, and then 5 years down the road, it turns out they were fucking wrong. Okay, and I've did the same thing. I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to be fucking stupid. Okay, and that's not saying that beliefs change, because sometimes beliefs do change. There's some things that I believed 2 years ago, 1 year ago, and I no longer hold the same belief that I do about certain subjects back then that I do now. And that's okay. Things change. People do the same. And that's completely all right. I want to grow. I want to be better. And I hope that you do as well. And the reason that I'm saying all this stuff is that we've come to a very divisive time in our culture and in our society. Everything has been so divisive. Everything has just been dividing, the politics especially. And, this is why I think a lot of the politics is bullshit now, is because I've heard a lot of shit, especially because I used to have a lot of debates, and sometimes I will do the debates, but I don't really like to debate unless it's productive, unless we are both debating to get somewheres, to get something out of it. It's good content. It can be good content. But the thing is, and I'll play devil's advocate every now and then, even though, like, if I believe in something or if I don't believe in something. Sometimes I'll just take the opposite position of whatever somebody's trying to argue, and I'll just see how that plays out. But I've seen a lot of people being divided amongst this subject of politics. And the relationships especially is just, it's not the way to go. And one of the things that I would like to talk about is reputation, okay? And you see, the thing is that I believe that reputation is something very, very important, okay? And image, okay? So, you may not think, I like to think that I don't give a fuck about shit, okay? And I don't. I don't give a fuck. But I do give a fuck about my reputation as a person. Okay? As a person. That's very important to put out there, because my reputation and in other aspects, maybe I don't give a fuck about, because like that doesn't diminish me as a person. You see, as long as people know that I'm a good person, that's what I care about. I do care about my reputation. I think other people should care about their reputation too. And some people don't. Some people make decisions and it tarnishes their reputation off of the decisions that they made. Like people getting locked up and shit. People doing illegal shit. Yeah, you do the illegal shit and then you get locked up, and then it's on your reputation. It's on your record, and there's not just a legal record, which, I mean, people do go by that, but that also adds into your reputation as a person. There's a social reputation here to be upheld. And if you are not upholding a certain reputation, people will look at you a certain way, and then they will automatically have this belief about you. And that may or may not be true. It may or may not be, And what's bad about this and what's good about it is that your reputation is there and people understand your reputation, and then they base what they do with you around your reputation, because some people don't want their reputation ruined if you have a bad reputation. And you know, I've kind of had a struggle, especially with the brand Wholehearted Entertainment. Is the image and reputation. You see, we do a lot of, because like I said, I don't give a fuck, and I like to make things entertaining for people. I like to be very entertaining, right? So whenever I make content like this, I also want to be genuine as well. So I make content and entertainment in which maybe I would consume, maybe back in the day that's not the case. Like the old podcast episodes is a lot of just bullshit. It's kind of like us live streaming. We're kind of just live streaming, and then I just put it together. Like I just slap an intro and slap an outro on that shit. Post it, we're good to go. It's a fucking live stream, basically. It's not, so a lot of the times it's not even entertaining. And here I've been trying more recently to be more entertaining, because that's the whole premise that the whole fucking company is based off of. Wholehearted Entertainment. I made Wholehearted Entertainment to be entertaining to people. I would like for people to be entertained. Okay, and then there's also a balance with that. This is the tricky part. The balance is being entertaining while also being genuine, while also upholding a good reputation and a good image, right? Because your brand reputation and your brand image, regardless if you have a brand like a company or not, you have your own brand and your own reputation that you have to go by. So you have your personal brand. That's what that's a term that people use. Just give me a second. I got to go get some Zins, or get the nicotine. I got my addictions and shit. Okay, now anyways, had to take my hoodie off too. It was getting a little bit warm. Now, people have their own brands and their own, because it's based off of their reputation and their image and how other people look at them. That goes for you too, whoever the fuck is watching this. Yeah, people do judge you, okay? People say that they're not judgmental, say that they're judgment-free. That is not fucking true. Everybody judges everybody. Regardless of what you say, regardless of what you think, you are judging another person based off of their reputation and their image. You are. Simple as that. You know what I'm saying? I don't like to judge people's character until I can get a good representation of what they are and interact with them enough to understand if they're actually a good person or not. Now, see, the thing is that people have personalized brands, whether you like to believe it or not. And that is you, who you are. What do people think about whenever they think of you? Okay, and like I was saying with Wholehearted Entertainment, I like to be genuine too. And there's a little bit of a balancing act you got to do there whenever you're doing these podcasts or whenever you're making content, because you want it to be entertaining, right? And you also want it to be genuine. Now, if you're going to be genuine and authentic, then most of the time there's going to be a little bit of downtime, Maybe there's going to be a little bit of silence in between the conversation. But you don't want that if you're having a podcast that's actually fucking entertaining, okay? You don't want the little bit of downtime, the little bit of silence and shit. And, like I said, it has been a balancing act, okay? And it has been something that I've kind of struggled with as well. And it's something that... because I've heard people say that on the podcast I have been disingenuous. And I get that. I get where they're coming from, but I also want it to be entertaining. So, I'm still the same person off of the podcast. Maybe sometimes I'm just not as eccentric. Sometimes I am. Sometimes I'm a fucking tweaker. I'm not going to lie to you, because I just got a lot of fucking energy. And, whenever I'm having conversations, sometimes I like to have more serious conversations. And on the podcast, I like to think that things are not as serious. And most of the time, I'm not a serious person. I'm not. And I've got a lot of flack for that as well, because I am not a serious person. And I like to joke about fucking everything. and I understand the issue that comes along with that, is that I take being unserious very seriously. And people like to be serious. Why so serious, brother? I'm more of a clown, bruh. I like to cut jokes, not a comedian. I'm more of a clown. You know what I'm saying? I'm not serious at all. I'm not a serious person. I like to be taken seriously, yes, but it's kind of hard to be taken seriously whenever I don't take anything seriously. And I come to see this. I come to see this little split in the fucking road here, because some people get upset at me because I don't take anything seriously. And I like to be like, you need to have a fucking sense of humor and all that shit. But I do understand where people's coming from, because maybe some people will get on here and then they want an interview. They want a serious interview. But you come to the wrong place, because I'm not a serious fucking person. Okay? So I'm going to laugh and I'm going to joke about shit. And, there's a time to be serious and there's time not to be serious. And it is my fucking podcast, and I'm not a serious person, so I'm not going to be fucking serious on my podcast. Okay? Just to let you know. And I think that should be okay. That should be all right. If you want a serious podcast, make your own goddamn podcast. Okay? And see, this is another thing that I run into. I say shit like that, and then I'm automatically claimed to be a dickhead. And I am a dickhead sometimes. I'm not gonna lie. I am a dickhead sometimes. I do be dickish. I like to be dickish sometimes. And this goes along. This all goes along. I'm gonna tie all this shit back together. Okay, I'm gonna tie all this shit back together. Don't you worry. It sounds like I'm going on a little bit of a rant, and everything is just going this way and that way and this way and that way. Well, that's the way I think. Okay, and that's kind of what's going on. But I swear to God, I'm gonna tie it back together at the end. This isn't Alani. This is not sponsored by Alani, but that's what we're drinking today. Maybe they'll pay us one day. Let's see. So, I'm very unserious. I'm an unserious person, and I've thought about, like I said, I've thought about going back on the old episodes and trying to see like where we've come from. Where's my? Okay, there we go. Sorry about the autofocus. I tend to be very unserious, and I've noticed that back on the old episodes, I've said something about politics, or I've joked about something that maybe somebody didn't like. Because sometimes if you tell jokes, if you're a joking person, then you ought to know by now that the jokes that you tell are not always going to hit. But the cool thing about it is that if you tell more jokes, you realize what's funny and you realize what's not. So then you're not going to say the things that's not funny anymore if you're trying to be funny. And that's cool. That's cool too. I fuck with that. And I'm also, I've noticed back in the old episodes that I've said shit that I thought was funny in the moment, and then I look back on it and I'm like, God damn, that's not fucking funny. Yeah, that's not funny. I've said some fucked up shit. I have said some fucked up shit, and some people have said some fucked up shit on this podcast. And I like to say that some of it's misinformation. We've said some misinformation. We've spread it. And we've said that shit before. We said that it's misinformation before. So I don't think that we can get in trouble for it. Don't know yet. I guess we're going to find out. But, there's a thing like, watch what you say, or like, don't say anything if you don't mean it. But I say shit I don't mean all the time, like sometimes I'll say racist shit. I'm not fucking racist. You know that I'm not. Sometimes I'll say, sometimes I'll make jokes, maybe about dead folk. That's fucking pretty bad. I've said some jokes. I've just said some fucked up jokes, okay? And it is kind of fucked up, but I like to have a little bit of laugh, and I'll even laugh about my own death. How about that? I think that y'all should too. I think that we should laugh whenever I die and I go to my funeral, and then you're at the funeral too. You should laugh. You better be laughing. I don't want nobody crying. I want people to have a good time, because whenever it comes to entertainment, wholehearted entertainment, we're doing this shit wholeheartedly, and it's entertainment. It's strictly entertaining. Okay? we're not trying to be serious. We're trying to be entertaining. Some people find shit serious, entertaining, and I get that. You know, like I said, whenever I get into politics, I don't get into politics anymore. If I do keep up with the politics, it's strictly for entertainment. So sometimes I do keep up with politics, but only just to be entertained. Like I'll put on a video about politics just to listen to it, just because it entertains me. And I think the problem that people have is that people will view that information, take it seriously, and then they will take it and run with it, you know? Even though, I mean, think about it. Back in the day, fucking cigarettes. People said that cigarettes were good for you. And then they started to realize that cigarettes give you cancer. That's what they started to realize. So you look at it back in the day, some people said some shit that just isn't fucking true. And I'm saying that everybody does that shit. Everybody says shit that they think is true in the moment, and then they hear something from the internet, or they read something in a fucking article, or some bullshit like that, and then they take the information and they fucking run with it, okay? And, you know, this all ties into your reputation and your image. And I understand also, I've worked with a lot of people because I'm good at the shit that I do, okay? I'm fucking good at it. So the thing is that people will realize that I'm good at the shit that I do, and then they want to work with me, but then they'll hear me say something fucking stupid, and then they're like, oh, I don't want to work with them. Or, you know, better yet, I'm smart enough to realize that people don't want to be associated with somebody that just doesn't give a fuck, or somebody that doesn't take anything seriously. I do take my art seriously. I take everything about my art seriously, and my art is entertainment, and I want to be entertaining. So I take that very seriously, and I've worked with people that I've said, you know, I'm trying to say that I'm smart enough where I will know that there is a professional business that wants my help with something or needs my help with something. But I recommend also that you probably don't want to be associated with my brand, because my brand may be, it doesn't align with your brand. And you don't want the reputation. You don't want my reputation to rub off on your reputation. I get that. You know, I'm not going to be butthurt about that. If somebody wants to work with me and they don't want my brand put across it, I get that. That's completely understandable. But I mean, it's something for you to think about too, you know, like what are you doing that is fucking up your reputation to where people don't want to fuck with you? And see, but that's the thing too, is that people fuck with me because I'm a trustworthy person. That brings us to the next topic, is trustworthiness. See, we got politics, reputation and image, and trustworthiness. It's all going to come together, I swear to God. Now, I've thought about deleting old episodes and whatnot, and, you know, I'm not opposed to it because whenever we talked about politics, and I've been completely wrong about shit before, because the thing is with politics, I'm going to hold off on the trust. We're going to get to that in a minute, but because I want to step back to the politics once more. Now with the politics, I've noticed that people will argue about shit that they think that they know about, and they'll have an argument for it. And you can look it up on the internet. There's fucking arguments for everything. If you have a certain position, especially whenever it comes to politics, there's a complete opposite position that you can find on the internet for fucking anything, okay? So that's why I think that a lot of it's bullshit, and most of it is bullshit. Like I said, the fucking cigarettes, dude. Back in the day, they thought cigarettes were good for you, and then they figured out the shit caused cancer. Okay? So that's pretty fucking, you know, duh, you know, people thought the earth was flat. Now they don't think that the earth is flat. You know, people's been wrong throughout human fucking history. And for you to sit here and stand on business like I have, I've said something and I stood on that shit, and it's not fucking true. Some of it's not true, right? Some things are true, you know, and whenever I'm talking about shit, whenever I'm giving you information, I like to convey information in the sense of, this is what's worked for me. I don't like to say this is what works 100%, but this is what works for me. And I like to convey that information because people understand that information more than this is what you have to do. You have to do this, and I get that. People don't want to take information from somebody whenever they're like, you need to do this. You have to do this in order to get X, Y, and Z. Maybe you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, but I'll take the information of this is what I've done, and this is what, this is what's worked for me. I completely get that. And that's okay. But who we got here? Who the fuck is here? We got a guest. Anyways, so I like to convey information in the sense of this is what's worked for me. And whenever it comes to politics and whatnot, people will argue one side or the other, and this is 100% set in stone, this is 100% true. And then, but like I was saying, you can go on the internet, and then you can find people that have said shit that's completely against whatever the fuck you said. Whatever the fuck you said. It doesn't matter what the fuck it is. It could be true, it could not be true. But that's the thing about living in this generation, is that in this generation, we have so much technology and so much information so much information at our fingertips that it's hard to know what is true and what is not. And a mistake that I've also made is that there's a lot of gray areas in the life. And I've talked about before because I thought that I fucking know everything. The thing about learning a lot of shit is that you think that you know more than everybody. And then once you start learning a lot more shit than that, you start to realize nobody knows anything, even yourself, even if you know a lot of shit, right? Because there's always more shit to learn. And whenever you're talking about something, especially larger topics, I know I like to talk about things in black and white, but life and people are a lot more complex than just black and white. There's a lot of gray areas. People are very complicated, and things are very complicated. And it's more complicated than what maybe somebody can explain it to you to be. Like, you see all these books. There's a bunch of books right here. It'll explain things and what people have learned, and studies, and even studies. You look at studies about shit, especially whenever, like, people will, in politics, people talk about the studies. There's studies showing that X, Y, and Z is this and that, some of those studies are fucking bullshit. Some of those studies are based off of bullshit. And some of those studies are done by people that maybe are fucking corrupt. Maybe this shit's paid off. Maybe not. That's the thing about all this information, is that you don't know what's true and you don't know what's not true. Everything is not black and white. People are gray. You know what I'm saying? And this is, metaphorically speaking, people are not actually fucking gray. Anyways, it's complicated. It's way more complicated than people make it out to be. And whenever you have conversations about generalized topics, it becomes very complicated, and you start to realize that, I started to realize that there's no reason to have this generalized conversation because everybody's fucking different. Okay? And I've also made a bunch of mistakes of talking about things that are like, yeah, this is set in stone. Like, and especially a good example that I can think of is whenever we're talking about men and women, sexual dynamics and whatnot. People like to have those arguments of like, men are X, Y, and Z. Women are X, Y, and Z. And that's not all of them. That's not all of them. And that's an important thing. And you can say the majority, and the majority is like 60% plus. And I think that it's better to speak from the position of, this is what I've learned. This is from my experience. This is what I've seen. And I think that's that. Things are way more complicated than people set them out to be. And people are not able to grasp the whole image of everything, especially whenever it comes to politics, because people will have an argument about something, but it's not completely true. They think that it is, but sometimes it's not. And this is for both sides. This isn't just for one side, because I know that I used to be specifically, I used to be very conservative. I somewhat am conservative because, whenever you think about it, there's things that has worked for hundreds of years and it'll still work to this day. And I still have, I have some liberal beliefs in the sense of, things that are progressive. Like I'm open to new ideas. I think some new ideas may work. Some new ideas have worked. And that's okay. I think that we can have a mixture of both. You don't have to be one or the other. People just go along with the divide. They think that you're either A or you're B, and there's no in between and none of that bullshit. See, the black and white conversation is fucking over with. We're done with the black and white conversation. Shit's gray, bro. Shit is gray. And you need to learn that. See, here I go again with the you need. I think you should learn, because I have learned from my personal experience that shit's way more complicated than people make it out to be. And if you're having a generalized conversation, it's still more complicated than what the fuck you're saying. Now, anyways, whenever I've talked about a bunch of things in the past, especially in the past episodes, it has been me talking about shit that has been black and white and things that have been generalized conversations. And I've thought about it before, and I'm like, okay, well, I've said something. Maybe I've joked being unserious, back to what I was saying, being unserious about something, and, maybe it was a terrible joke. Maybe I said a bad joke. Maybe somebody else said a bad joke. And, maybe I said something that I thought that I was educated about, but I'm not educated about, and I just look fucking stupid. And that's okay. I thought about going back and, deleting a lot of the episodes, but I'm not going to fucking do that. And the reason I'm not going to do that is because it shows growth. You can look at the old episodes and you can look at the new episodes, and the new episodes are more entertaining than the old episodes sometimes. There's some funny moments and there's some good moments in the old episodes. And, but like I said, it's not just about being funny, it's about being entertaining. For me, personally, my brand, it's, Wholehearted Entertainment. I think that it should be entertaining, but, and if anybody didn't like an episode or something, maybe we could talk about it and shit. And we could be like, yo, I didn't like that episode. I think that I look terrible in it. That's fine. I'm willing to compromise with you, I'm willing to go back and, check it out, see what we got going on. Maybe we can get rid of that episode. Maybe not. Whatever the fuck you want to do. That goes to the next topic of trust, And whenever I was talking about image earlier and your reputation, trust is one of the biggest components to add to that, is because people's not going to fuck with you if they don't trust you. You have to have trust. And in my experience, I experienced that people fuck with me because they trust me. I feel like a lawyer sometimes. I feel like whenever we talk about something, it is client confidentiality, right? That's from the perspective of a lawyer. Legally, if you tell a lawyer something, they can't tell the cops anything. They can't do anything that you say to them that is going to incriminate you. Because why the fuck would they? And that goes for you too. If somebody says something to you and they say something to you and that's from a position of vulnerability, they expect to trust you. They expect that you're not going to say anything to anybody. And I feel like that's one of the reasons that people fuck with me, is because in private conversations, if somebody says something to me and they say, don't tell nobody this, but this and this and this and that, that shit's going to stay with me to the grave. I ain't telling nobody a soul. I'm not telling a fucking soul. You're going to tell me don't tell nobody. I ain't telling a fucking soul. And that's how it should be. That's how it should be. If you want a good reputation and you want people to fuck with you, then you're going to have to do that. You're going to have to let people fucking trust you. You're going to have to be trustworthy. This is from my experience. Like I said, I'm not telling you what you have to do. Well, you do whatever the fuck you want to do. But whenever it comes to being trustworthy, you got to give people a reason to trust you. Right? Okay? Because people aren't going to fucking trust you if you're not trustworthy. If you're stealing shit from people, people are not going to fucking trust you. If you're saying shit behind people's backs and then they get a whiff of it, they're not going to fucking trust you. If somebody says something to you and then you go and tell somebody and then it comes back to them, they're not going to fucking trust you. So why would they tell you anything ever again? Right? So you need to be fucking trustworthy, and you know, that just goes along with a lot of the shit. You need to be trustworthy, loyalty, people, you know, be loyal to people. You know, if people are doing shit for you, maybe you might need to do some shit for them. You know, give and take a little bit, give and take. And whenever it comes to reputation, if you have a good reputation of doing all these things, and especially being a man of your word, saying you're going to do something and then doing it. If you say that you're going to do something, you should fucking do that shit. If you're not going to do that shit, then people's going to look at you and be like, you know, they said they was going to do this, and then they said they was going to do this, and then they never did that shit. So I don't like to say that I'm going to do shit unless I'm actually 100% going to do it, because I want to be trustworthy, and I want to have a good image, and I want to have a good reputation. And I'm saying this because this is from what I've learned, and maybe you can learn from it too. And this also goes back into the old episodes. A lot of the old episodes, I said some shit. I said that I was going to do some shit, and then I didn't fucking do that shit. Like, I said that I was going to write a book, for example. I said that I was going to write a book. I started the book. I wrote the book. I wrote a lot of the book, got the whole structure and everything for the book, and it was going to be a good-ass book, Scared of the Skeletons. I've talked about it. I've talked about it in a lot of the older episodes, Scared of the Skeletons. It was going to be a book about life and telling you, you know, it's like a self-help book. But the thing is, I read a lot of self-help books, and in the process of learning about what I should put into the self-help book, I was reading a bunch of other books, psychological books, self-help books, and whatnot, and I just realized that a lot of these people can write a lot fucking better than me. And Robert Greene is one of them. Shout out to Robert Greene. He's the author of 48 Laws of Power, Art of Seduction, and Mastery, and Daily Laws, and Laws of Human Nature, all that shit. He's an amazing author. He's probably one of the reasons why I was like, you know, I'm not writing a fucking book. Because he's too fucking good, and there's no way I'm going to be able to compete with that. You know, I don't want to half-ass things. I don't want to say I'm going to do things and then either not do them or just do it to where it's only good enough. I want it to be fucking phenomenal. I want it to be great. And, you know, I'm not going to do it unless it is that. Okay? And that's the reputation that I want to have. What's the reputation that you want to have? What the fuck is your reputation? You know? Did you ever fucking think about that? Some people don't consider that whenever they're doing shit. They don't consider, like, what the fuck their reputation is going to be and all that shit. But anyways, old episodes, I wanted to delete them. And I wanted to delete them because it might make me look bad. It probably will. People will probably go back into the old episodes, clip things that I've said out of context, or maybe in context, because I said a lot of stupid shit in context too. And then they're going to clip that, and then they're going to make me look like a fucking terrible person. It is what it is. I'm cool with that, whatever, you know. But people know at the end of the day, I am a good person, because that's just my fucking reputation. As a person, I'm a good fucking person. I may say stupid fucking shit sometimes, and I just do it just for shits and giggles, just to be funny a little bit. Sometimes the shit ain't funny, like I said, but I like to be entertaining. But another thing that I've did, like art, I've did art and shit. I've wanted to be, you know, and back in the day, I even did music. I wanted to be this fucking big rapper and everything. I wanted to be this amazing musical artist and whatnot, and I didn't half-ass it. I did it how, and you know, things change. You know, things change. People do the same. Back to what we were saying. Things change. People do the same, and I don't want to be looked at personally as my reputation is. I don't want to be looked at somebody that just does something half-ass. I don't think you should either. You know, I want you to be trustworthy, and I want to be trustworthy as well. And I don't want you to be talking about politics and talking about shit that you don't fucking know and thinking that you know the shit. And maybe think about it as it's a possibility. Be open-minded, be optimistic, all that bullshit like that. But I think that if you want to change about shit, if you want things to change, whenever we're talking about politics too, people will complain about politics. Like I keep on saying, things change, people do the same. And whenever you're talking about politics, people will talk shit about what's going on, this and that, but they're not going to put forth the effort to do anything about it. There's nothing that they do that will change anything. They will talk shit about whatever the fuck is going on, and then nothing changes. So why are you going to talk shit and complain about whatever the fuck's going on if you're not going to try to do anything to change whatever the fuck is going on? I get that there's some times where things are happening around you and there's nothing that you can do about it. I get that, but what is the point of complaining about it? Because nothing's going to change if you're just sitting there fucking complaining about it. So be the change. I say to be the change that you want. You know, if you want a change to happen, lead by example. Be the change. You know, if you want the shit to change, then you better act your fucking best. You know, maybe fucking change yourself. Do something that is going to be for the greater good. You know, act upon that. Not just, you know, what you want other people to do, because maybe what you want other people to do is not going to fucking happen. You can only change whatever the fuck you can change. If you can't change something, no point in complaining about it. Just do whatever you fucking can to change whatever you want to change. I think this is going to conclude the episode. It's been all over the place, and I hope that I didn't lose anybody within it, because I'm a little Scrabble brain. I'm a little scrambled egg brain in the head and shit. But everything's cool and shit. So just be cool and shit like that. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope I talked about everything that I wanted to fucking talk about. I hope that you enjoyed. I hope that maybe you got something from this. I hope that you come back. Subscribe, like, and all that bullshit. Peace out.